Welcome back to Cottage Designs by Erin, where today we are in my classroom and I thought that I would show you how to do some common embroidery stitches that I used to make the recent quilt block that I finished. So I'm going to go ahead and move the camera to my hands now. Okay, so if you see, I have here in front of me, I have to move this back a little bit. I have a quilt block that is vintage, and this is the second one it's the twin of the one that I just finished, and this was made in St. Clair, Missouri. Of course it is vintage. This was given to me by a local lady who she gives me sewing supplies quite often, which I'm always very appreciative of. So you're going to need some kind of hoop. I like the old metal kind because they hold it very tight and there's no guessing on it. It just automatically does it. Some embroidery scissors. And then you're going to need some kind of embroidery floss. In this case, I'm just using a standard DMC. And I'm using yellow 3822. So you put the bottom hoop underneath. The spring action hoop goes on top. And then you just pull your fabric until it's nice and taut across the frame. All right, so we're going to be working on what appears to be a dandelion right there in the center. So you're going to take a stab, tie a little knot in the back, all right, now to do the lazy daisy stitch, which is what we're on, you're going to hold one side down with your thumb. You're then going to go back through the hole that you came out of, the one that you started with. And then you come up through the bottom of the teardrop, and that needle then goes between the loop of your thread, so that when you pull, your teardrop will stay in place. And then you go ahead and you stab a stitch to hold it down. Now you can also, to make it a little wider, you can come up and put a little stitch on the side. Okay, so let's try that again. You're going to mimic the shape of the teardrop. Come up through the bottom of the teardrop and angle your needle right through the center of your string. And then when you pull it, that will hold it in place. Come up through the bottom of the teardrop. Make sure your needle goes in between the loop of your thread and pull, and that will hold it in place. Okay, so that's how you do a basic lazy daisy stitch. Next, we have our stems. For that, I've been using a thicker thread, which is a DMC number 5 pearl cotton. And you usually take elbow's length of your thread. I like mine really long, which I used to get in trouble for as a kid because, of course, it's easier to knot if the thread is very long. I just like working with longer thread. I might need a needle with a wider eye on it. This is a needle card. It came from Joann Fabrics. It is magnetic. It's a magnet on the back. It keeps all your needles nice and in one place. Okay, now to do our stitch here, we're going to do a back stitch. So you're going to come up, again, tie a little knot in the back. And you're going to make your first stitch. Think of it as little staples going across. Now to do a back stitch, you're going to come up about the same distance as you made the first stitch. And you're going to bring bring the thread back towards yourself. So I'm coming up and I'm bringing the stitch back towards my body. That's why it's called a back stitch. Here we have yet another lazy daisy. So I'm going to stab it at the bottom. I'm going to mimic the shape by going around. Pierce the same hole that we came out of, and then you're going to come up through the teardrop at the very end. Let me get this up here better. Through the teardrop at the very end, and notice my needle is in the loop of the thread. I'm going to take that and pull, and that will give us our lazy daisy leaves. So we've done a lazy daisy and we've done a back stitch. Okay, so I'm going to leave that thread there. Next, we are going to do a French knot. I personally hate making French knots. I do not think they're fun, but a lot of people like them. If I do a few, I'm happy with just a few, but I'm not happy if I have to make a ridiculous amount of them. Okay, now this is DMC purple. I don't have the actual number on here because I took the tag off. I'm using all 6 strands on this. On the yellow, I use 3 strands. On the pearl cotton, you don't divide it. It's just it is what it is. So now I'm going to take all 3 strands. Okay, so we're going to go up here to where the polka dots are on the umbrella. And again, we're going to go through the center of the polka dot, and we're going to put a little knot in the back of our thread. Now then, you are going to take your needle and hold it at an angle, hold it horizontal sideways. Take your thread and wrap it around 1, 2, 3 times. Go down through the center of the hole on the polka dot there. And then you're going to very, very slowly pull. And there's our first French knot. I'm going to travel over here to the second one. I'm going up through the center of the knot. I need to straighten my thread out here a little bit. I got some kinks in it. You want your thread nice and flat. Having a hard time getting it back through the eye. Okay, hold your needle sideways, or think of it holding it from east to west. Take your thread, wrap it around your needle 1, 2, 3 times. You can do it twice if you want to. Go down through the hole of the polka dot and gently pull. And that's how you make a French knot. So we've done a lazy daisy, a back stitch, and a French knot. Now then, the only stitch we have left on here is a basic cross stitch. And I don't know if I'll have enough of this to finish all of the parasol, but I'll go ahead and show you just the same. So we're back to dividing our thread into 3. Because if you do a thicker stitch, these are so close together, it looks too messy. I always start going to the right. So I get on my X. Again, put a little knot in the back. I'm going to the right, and you're trying to stay on the little bar that is there. Which in the end is not that significant, because once you wash this, all of this blue ink will wash out. Okay, so we finished the whole row going to the right. Now we are going to come back and go to the left and go over, making our X complete, making our cross stitch complete. These blocks are 18 inches. They're fairly large. It took me 3 weeks to finish the last block, and I know I did not work on it every day. That's just working on it as I had time. But I did sit for long periods of time to complete the block. Okay, then here's our last stitch. Once you get to your last stitch, you flip it over and you work it underneath the closest X, and that will keep your thread in place. And then you always want to go back and tidy up your thread so that you don't have a big bunch. Now, all these threads that I have hanging out the back of here are threads that I'm going to continue to use. I was just showing you how to make the stitch. Okay, so now let me take this out. So if you noticed, in the last few minutes, we worked a lazy daisy, a back stitch, the leaf is a lazy daisy, a cross stitch, and a French knot. Once you have finished the entire block, it will look like this. Okay, so we have all of our stitches are complete. All of our little French knots are made up here. I made some pretty large French knots because I like the feel of that. I did use different types of thread. If you notice, this is a thicker wool type thread. Here's some French knots here in the center. Isn't that beautiful? And then I used the DMC pearl cotton here, and then the flatter stitches are the other DMC every day. So let me show you the difference in thread. This is a DMC number 4. And I believe it is that the lower the number, the thicker the thread. And this is hilarious. On here it says 35 cents. This was purchased back in the 90s. This is your average DMC number 25. Okay, so you can see this is much thinner than this. You can use embroidery needles, but if you use the thicker threads, you're going to have a needle with a bigger eye, like those you see here. Okay, so let me bring the camera back up. Okay, so in this video, we learned how to do a cross stitch, which is the blue X's on the fabric. We learned how to do a French knot, which is these cute little raised dimensional knots. We learned how to do a back stitch, which is what I used for the leaves. I didn't do a stem stitch, although you could. And we learned how to do a lazy daisy. And the lazy daisy was used to make the dandelion and also to make the leaves on the stems. So what am I going to do with this? I'm going to finish the second one, and then I hope to sew them together into a quilt using the 2-block method that I mentioned earlier in one of my videos. It was called How to Make a Twin Size Quilt Using 2 18-inch quilt blocks. Where can you find these old-fashioned quilt blocks? You can go to eBay or Etsy and type in stamped linen or embroidered quilt blocks to embroider, vintage linens, vintage embroidery linens, and all this will come up. You can also find pillowcases, table runners, bedspread kits, tablecloths. But you need to go under and look up stamped vintage linens or any one of those other things I just mentioned. and you will find it. You can also look up name brands of companies that made these, like Paragon, Paragon. Jack Dempsey still makes quilt blocks that you can embroider. Let me think what else. Creative Circle had kits. Bucilla, Bucilla. You can find their kits as well. So I hope you enjoyed my video today. Please like it and give it a thumbs up, and check back later for more. Thank you.